Okay, now in this part, I wanted to take you to travel around Indonesia virtually from the main island of Java to Borneo or Kalimantan until the corner of Indonesia, Papua. Why? Because I wanted to show you what we have, like our tropical forests, our biodiversity, our ocean coral reefs, and things like that. But I also want to show you several challenges that we are currently facing, along with a couple of initiatives that we do to solve the problem. So the first part is about sustainable agriculture in Bali. This is very interesting because traditional methods of rice farming in Bali, which is called subak, are highly sustainable and somehow they can manage water resources very efficiently. The second part is about wildlife reserve in Kalimantan, Borneo. This is an amazing place because it becomes a sanctuary for a great diversity of endangered species like orangutans, proboscis monkeys, sun bears, and many more. And the third part will be the marine conservation in Raja Ampat, West Papua. Raja Ampat is a remote corner of the world located in West Papua, and this has become the most diverse places in our planet. This also becomes the most sustainable destination in Asia. In the next section, I wanted to show you the recycling plastic that we are doing at this moment after we throw it away to the trash bin. For your information, every year we have at least 5.6 million metric tons of plastic waste. And this becomes very serious because only a very tiny percentage of those plastic that is actually recycled. Moreover, we are also facing a problem where Western plastics were being imported into Indonesia. Of course, this is very dangerous because it can create long-term exposure towards environmental problems like chemicals that is linked to cancer, damage to our immune systems, as well as many developmental issues. And then concurrently, we will be moving on to the causes and solutions to palm oil deforestation. Palm oil is one of the biggest industries in Indonesia, but on the other hand, it also becomes one of the most problematic industries in the country. The government of Indonesia has initiated Indonesian Sustainable Palm Oil Certification System to solve this kind of problems. And then I wanted to show you the sustainable tuna fishing in Indonesia. This is the story of Indonesia's pole and line and handline tuna fishers and fish walkers and why they became interested in fishing sustainably. And then we will be moving to the main island of Java because I wanted to show you the vegan mushroom leather fashion in Indonesia. This is also very interesting because we can use agricultural waste to make interesting products. Obviously, it will become very easy on the environment and it also doesn't involve killing animals. And finally, I wanted to show you the Green School in Bali. This is a school in the middle of the jungle designed to have the lowest carbon footprint possible. And this school is particularly teach a community of more than 400 young people to become future green leaders. So I hope you will enjoy this kind of contents, and I also hope that this kind of contents could give you a more comprehensive picture about sustainable management in Indonesia.
Bali is gaining attention as an example of sustainable agriculture. Traditional systems of rice cultivation in Bali combine cultural organizations with religious rituals to develop complex schedules for planting, irrigation, and harvesting wet rice paddies. Balancing changing water needs, fertilizer inputs, and pest control, these schedules maximize the yields on thousands of individual rice terraces. Interestingly, these ancient practices have proven superior in many cases to modern technological approaches of industrial agriculture. Lying just below the equator, next to the island of Java, Bali is blessed with fertile volcanic soil and a warm, moist climate that produces bountiful rice harvests. Numerous rivers pour down the mountain slopes of Bali, but they've cut deep valleys that provide little level land for farming. To grow their crops, Balinese farmers have created thousands of terraces that step up the hillsides or cluster together on the tops of high ridges. Some of these terraces have been cultivated for 1,000 years without decreasing crop yields. Although there's generally lots of water in the valleys, getting it to the rice paddies has always been a difficult problem for the Balinese. Small dams called weirs divert water from rivers into irrigation canals that wind their way through tunnels and cross aqueducts until they reach the paddies where the water is needed. A group of paddies supplied by a single irrigation canal is called a subak. Many farmers may own land within the subak, and they work together as a cooperative to maintain the canal system and to decide democratically on planting and irrigation schedules that optimize water supplies and minimize pest outbreaks for everyone. As the canal enters the subak, it's divided again and again into smaller and smaller channels to deliver water to terraces at different levels. Eventually, higher terraces drain into lower ones. Throughout the paddies, you constantly hear the sound of running water. Religion permeates life in Bali. Every home and shop has a shrine or small temple where daily offerings are made to the gods to ask for their blessings. Religious rites also regulate farming. Every farmer has a small field shrine dedicated to the rice and water goddesses. And every subak has its own temple where farmers gather for rituals and discussion of planting and irrigation schedules. Each subak temple is a subordinate to the Maseti water temple that coordinates a group of subaks that get their water from common weir. Water temples often feature sacred springs or pools as symbols of the source of crucial water supplies. Eventually, all the water temples are subordinate to the mother temple in the crater of Lake Batur, which is considered the ultimate source of all the water on the island. In the 1950s and 60s, Indonesia suffered from a series of severe food shortages and widespread malnourishment. The country needed to import more than 1 million tons of rice per year. These food shortages played a role in the overthrow of the Sukarno government in 1965. The new Suharto government immediately instituted a program of agricultural development to improve food supplies. One of the first targets for farm improvements was Bali, which had long been the rice bowl for Indonesia. Just as the Indonesian government was trying to boost rice production, the International Rice Institute in the Philippines released new, high-yielding hybrid rice varieties. These Green Revolution varieties were high responders. That is, given high inputs of water, fertilizer, and pesticides, they could double rice yields compared to traditional varieties. However, as this graph shows, under less than optimal conditions, traditional breeds, which often have broad tolerance levels, can actually produce higher harvests than the hybrid strains. Balinese farmers were encouraged to plant rice as quickly as possible without regard for traditional irrigation schedules. But the immediate gains in yield produced by this policy soon began to be offset by water shortages and unprecedented outbreaks of rice pests and diseases. Bureaucrats, even Balinese ones in the Department of Agriculture, seemed unaware or unconcerned with religion's role in establishing planting and irrigation schedules. According to agricultural technicians, growing rice is simply a matter of science and engineering. Traditional practices, in their view, were simply old-fashioned superstitions, where, under traditional systems, all the paddies in a subak were planted together and then had a fallow period of several months after harvest. The drive to plant as quickly as possible after harvest gradually created a chaotic pattern in which every paddy was in a different stage of development. After several years of disastrous harvests, many farmers revolted and went back to the traditional patterns arranged through the temples. A brilliant analysis of the role of water temples in Balinese agriculture can be found in Stephen Lansing's 1990 book, Priests and Programmers, as well as in his 2006 book on the same subject, titled Perfect Order, Recognizing Complexity in Bali. In these books, Lansing examines the social dynamics of agroecology in Bali. It seems that temple priests don't dictate agricultural practices so much as they act as mediators to bring about a consensus among Subak members. By working together on canal maintenance and in carrying out temple ceremonies, the Subak members create a sense of community that supports and enforces cooperative actions. One of the problems with uncoordinated planting schedules was water stress. Rice needs a flooded paddy during the growing season and then needs to dry out as the grain ripens. When Subak's designed to have water flow from paddy to paddy, it's impossible to accommodate many different planting times. The volcanic soil of Bali contains relatively abundant phosphate and potassium. The traditional fallow period gives time for upstream erosion to replenish mineral supplies in the paddies. Furthermore, azala and other nitrogen-fixing plants grow during the fallow period. Before planting, this green manure is pushed down into the mud to nourish the rice seedlings. Ducks play an important role in the rice paddy ecology. They eat the spilled grains, frogs, snails, eels, and small fish that live in the paddy. Duck droppings help fertilize the rice plants, and at the end of the growing season, the ducks become food for humans. Rats are one of the main rice field pests. Paddy rats reproduce only when the rice plants are flowering. This means the baby rats are born just as the rice is ripening and food is most abundant. Baby rats mature in 3 weeks, and each female can produce a litter of 12 babies every 3 weeks after that. With only 2 rice crops a year, the rats have only 2 litters a year. But when paddies are planted throughout the year, a single female rat can have as many as 120 babies. Exponential growth can produce astronomical numbers of rats that can destroy an entire crop. Green Revolution hybrids are also highly susceptible to insect pests and diseases. One of the worst problems in the 1980s was the brown leafhopper. These insects can fly readily from paddy to paddy, and a dense infestation can destroy an entire crop. Leafhoppers like young, tender rice plants. A long fallow period can reduce insect numbers, but continuous cropping results in a population explosion. The Indonesian government provided insecticides to fight leafhoppers. Broad-spectrum pesticides killed beneficial species as well as pests. This leads to a condition known as pesticide rebound, in which it takes more and more spray to give the same level of protection, and pest populations get larger and larger after each application. Stephen Lansing and a systems ecologist named James Kramer studied one set of subaks in great detail. 172 subaks occur between the Os and Petanu rivers in Gianyar, just east of Ubud. The subaks are subdivided into 12 groups, each of which has its own water temple in Major Weir, where the water is diverted from the river. Lansing and Kramer collected hydrologic and production statistics for each subak. It's difficult to do controlled studies on fields on which local farmers depend for their livelihood. So Lansing and Kramer created a computer model to test various management strategies. The problem faced by the subaks is how to maximize water availability and pest control. If everyone plants at the same time, they'll also harvest at the same time, and a widespread fallow period will reduce pest populations by depriving them of food and or habitat. On the other hand, if everyone plants at the same rice variety simultaneously to coordinate their harvest and fallow periods, then the irrigation demand cannot be staggered and water stress will occur. The model tested 7 planting schedules ranging from all the subaks acting as a single unit to, at the far extreme, every farmer planting whenever he or she wants to. As you can see, the highest water stress occurs when all the subaks plant in unison, and the lowest water stress is when the water temples coordinate planting. If you add pest control to the model, then the situation becomes more complex. Pest damage is shown by the black diamonds and the right y-axis. As previously mentioned, pest outbreaks are highest when each farmer follows an individual schedule. The least damage occurs when the water temples coordinate planting schedules. Putting these two variables together, we find that the highest yield in tons per hectare occurs when the temples set cropping patterns, while the lowest yield is found when the subaks set their own cropping patterns. If Lansing's estimates are correct, the farmers in these subaks, even though they use far less chemical fertilizers and pesticides, are getting just as much rice per hectare as farmers in the U.S. Many paddies in the subak are too small for machines, so most labor is done by hand. Volunteer rice stalks grown from spilled grain are chopped down and turned under the soil. Ripe rice is harvested by hand and threshed by beating stalks on a basket or a board. Chaff is removed from the grain by winnowing. Full rice bags are transported to market by motorcycle. By optimizing planting and irrigation schedules, Subaks minimize rice pests and diseases while producing the best possible yields for everyone. Altogether, the terraced rice paddies create a beautifully engineered landscape and an interesting example of the integration of tradition, culture, and religion in cooperative agroecology and sustainability.
This swamp peatland forest is home to amazing tropical plants, animals, and insects. It is here, amidst the undisturbed biodiversity of Mother Nature, that one can still hear the story of an almost forgotten realm. Located along the Lamandau River in the western reaches of central Kalimantan, Indonesia, the Lamandau Wildlife Reserve is located between two districts, West Kota Waringin and Sukamara. Appointed under the decree of the Minister of Forestry on the 26th February 1998, the Lamandau Wildlife Reserve was created to protect the diversity of species and preserve their natural habitat. It is early morning on the western borders of the Lamandau Wildlife Reserve. A haze covers the wide plains of the Sukamara district. Just beyond the swamps is a lake known as Danau Burung, or Bird Lake, a popular destination for large migrating birds such as the long-legged heron. These non-swimming waterbirds feed on the margins of lakes, rivers, swamps, and the sea. This group of herons will remain by the lake until the end of the breeding season. Upriver, in the thick, swampy forests of the eastern Lamandau Wildlife Reserve, other wildlife can be seen. For example, the orangutan. The orangutan is found only in Sumatra and on the island of Borneo. The world's largest population of orangutans lives right here in central Kalimantan. The number of orangutans inhabiting a forest is a good natural indicator for the health of a forest. Their diet of different fruits such as rambutan, jackfruit, figs, and many others makes the orangutan an effective disperser of seeds, accelerating the forest's natural regeneration. This orangutan is only a few months old, but already an expert climber. He is part of the rehabilitation program run by the Indonesian government and Orangutan Foundation International. Camp Rasak is one of the release sites for orangutans that have been rehabilitated or relocated. Deeper in the forest, we encounter another creature, the sun bear, also known as the honey bear. Up to 1.5 meters long, it is the world's smallest bear. The sun bear has been observed eating more than 100 types of insects and more than 50 plant species. His powerful jaws can crack open nuts, and long, powerful claws are used to break into tree trunks and fallen logs, helping him access honey, grubs, and termites. A closer look into this majestic forest reveals a secret world of plants, animals, and insects, all contributing to the integrated balance of the ecosystem, one that has been going on for thousands of years. It is 4:30 in the afternoon, and the first creatures have arrived by the river to eat, play, and talk. A group of proboscis monkeys has arrived. This primate is recognized by its unusually large nose, which can measure up to 10 centimeters long. Harder to find, but still very present in these forests, are animals such as the red-tailed monkey and the gibbon, which is recognized by its haunting call early in the mornings. Predators such as the crocodile and a variety of snakes keep the animal kingdom on constant alert. The late evening sun brings fish to the surface, making them an easy catch for an expert fisherman such as the kingfisher. To create a balance between this natural habitat and the local population living in and around the Lamanda Wildlife Reserve, all activities such as construction, fishing, or harvesting must abide by the principles of conservation. These activities are closely monitored and guarded by the BKSDA, whose bases are located at various forest entry points along the Lamanda River. However, one of the greatest threats to the wildlife reserve are wildfires. Uncontrolled slash and burn activities cause rampant forest fires along the borders of the Lamanda Wildlife Reserve, often to the detriment of this fragile ecosystem. The Mangala Agni Bangkalanbun was created to help protect this conservation area. Early warning systems, patrols, and fire extinguishing are all efforts made to help protect the reserve. However, due to the size of the coverage area, the help and awareness of the community is also needed to protect the reserve. The Lamanda Wildlife Reserve is a symbol of conservation, a refuge for one of the country's largest natural heritages. Efforts are being made to increase awareness amongst the local population and to help people see the forest not simply as a resource for income, but also as an essential part of human existence on this planet.
Raja Ampat, a remote corner of the world located in West Papua, Indonesia, is known as one of the most biodiverse places on our planet. In the not-so-distant past, Raja Ampat was nothing more than a nickel mining area, but over the last 20 years, this region has become one of the most important marine conservation areas in the world. As sustainable travel advocates, we travel to Raja Ampat to learn more about the role that responsible tourism plays in this region. The environmental protection and sustainable development of Raja Ampat began well before the boom in tourism. To ensure the long-term health of the marine ecosystem in Raja Ampat, in 2007, the government of Indonesia established marine protected areas that now cover around 35,000 square kilometers and 45% of Raja Ampat's coral reefs and mangroves. In 2013, the area around Raja Ampat was also declared Indonesia's first shark and ray sanctuary. Many of the environmentally destructive activities like dynamite fishing, shark fishing, mining, and logging have been strictly forbidden in the Raja Ampat region. Thanks to this aggressive management of marine protected areas, fish biodiversity has increased dramatically during the last decade, and local fishermen have discovered other ways to earn an income. Through numerous education programs, locals have learned the importance of protecting the fragile ecosystem of Raja Ampat and have become advocates for sustainable tourism practices in the region. Today, many of the villagers work in guest houses or resorts, show tourists their unique culture and arts, and work together with government and non-government agencies to protect their precious home. As travelers, we too can do our part to support sustainable tourism practices in the region by choosing to visit Raja Ampat with sustainable operators, stay in eco-friendly lodges, or in one of the 100 homestays in the region. We discovered that there's no better way to learn about the area and the impact tourism is having on its residents than to experience the region with local guides and responsible operators.
Indonesia memproduksi lebih dari 5,6 juta ton plastik setiap tahunnya. Hal ini menyebabkan banyak masalah sosial, ekonomi, dan lingkungan. Tapi, apa saja yang sudah dilakukan untuk menanggulanginya? Di episode The Pledge kali ini, kami akan mencari tahu bagaimana plastik bisa didaur ulang dan apa yang bisa kita lakukan untuk memulai gaya hidup ramah lingkungan.
Sekarang kita udah ada di TPA. Dan di sini ada truk-truk yang mau buang sampah, lagi ngantri. Dan habis itu kita akan tour keliling TPA. Bau banget. But yeah, I think it's gonna be fun. Or scary.
Sekarang, aku akan ketemu dengan Pak Acep, Kepala UPTD TPA Bantar Gebang, Bekasi.
Boleh diceritakan sedikit, Bapak, Pak Acep ini di sini perannya seperti apa?
Saya di TPA Sumur Batu ini sebagai Kepala UPTD TPA.
Kalau ini apa ya Pak? Boleh diceritakan ini area apa?
Area pelayanan pembuangan aktif. Ya kita sebut ini per zona 3. Ini di belakang kita ini zona 2.
Jadi ya, kalau truk masuk ke sini buang sampahnya ke gundukan yang ini?
Ke gundukan kita mempergunakan dengan alat berat namanya ekskavator. Karena kita udah tinggi, ketinggian kita ini 25 meter.
Ini 25 meter?
25 meter kurang lebih. Dengan mempergunakan 5 alat, truk kurang lebih 240.
Tapi kalau misalnya selain ada truk keluar masuk sini, pemulung juga boleh ya?
Boleh. Nah itu contohnya tuh yang di atas itu. Dia mencari plastik-plastik. Nanti diturunin ke bawah, dia angkut bawa pulang.
Oh yang mereka ambil berarti masih bisa diolah ya?
Bisa diolah plastik-plastik itu. Yang salah satunya plastik PE itu memang agak mahal. Gitu.
sekarang aku lagi mau ngobrol-ngobrol sama salah satu pemulung yang bekerja di sini untuk minta diajarin sebenarnya plastik-plastik yang seperti apa sih yang masih ada nilai ekonomisnya dan plastik-plastik mana yang nggak bisa diolah lagi. Halo Pak.
Yuk.
Ya.
Dari mana nih?
Afi, dari Vice Pak.
Oh.
Maaf nih Pak ganggu, mau nanya ini kira-kira plastik kayak apa sih yang masih ada nilai gunanya?
Ya seperti ini kan botol aqua masih ada nilainya juga kan.
Kalau yang nggak ada gunanya itu yang seperti apa Pak?
Yang gunanya seperti plastik yang susah diolah seperti plastik film itu nggak bisa diolah.
Tadi Bapak bilang saset juga nggak bisa ya Pak?
Nggak bisa.
Ini beratnya berapa Pak kira-kira segini?
Kalau penuh ini sekitar 50 kiloan. Nilai jualnya
Kalau
kalau
per
misalnya
karung gini?
per karung ini cuma murah cuma 40.000.
40.000 ya?
Iya 40.000. 40.000. Kadang-kadang ya ada yang lagi naik barangnya bisa 50.000 gitu. Sekarung per karung gini.
Bapak kalau sehari kerja di sini bisa dapat berapa karung?
Ya paling 2.
Paling 2 ya?
Iya,
Paling banyak?
Paling banyak 2 lah. Masih bisa nanti. Ya seperti dia aja Bu, kerjaan sehari-hari.
Iya Pak. Cari nafkah ya Pak?
Iya,
Buat makan.
buat keluarga lah gitu.
Iya betul
Daripada
Pak.
kita yang cari yang gak halal, juga yang halal kan.
Makasih Pak, kita boleh main-main ke sini. Dinas Lingkungan Hidup Kota Bekasi itu perannya seperti apa?
Jadi Dinas Lingkungan Hidup itu mempunyai tupoksi, salah satunya adalah mengelola persampahan dari sumber sampai ke TPA, ke hilirnya.
Sebenarnya prosesnya gimana sih Pak? Karena banyak dari kita tuh nggak paham proses yang dilalui sampah-sampah yang kita produksi sampai akhirnya bisa berakhir di sini.
Sampah yang diproduksi di Kota Bekasi ini ada sekitar 1.700 ton sehari. Nah, itu sumbernya rumah tangga sebagian besar, yang lainnya itu dari industri, dari sumber tersebut. Sekarang itu sistemnya kita angkut, kita bawa ke TPA.
Terus kalau udah nyampe sini tuh diapain ya Pak?
Disimpan saja, disimpan, digundukan seperti ini.
Bagaimana sih Pak kalau melihat 5 tahun ke belakang atau 10 tahun ke belakang, apakah sampah plastik itu semakin menumpuk atau justru berkurang?
Sampah plastik justru makin tahun makin tinggi ya.
Kira-kira kalau sampah yang nggak bisa diolah seperti ini lalu ditumpuk di sini, itu butuh waktu berapa tahun sih untuk bisa akhirnya terurai?
Tahunan, ratusan tahun.
Wah, lama banget ya Pak.
Setelah melihat semua plastik yang dibuang dari sekitar Jakarta dan Bekasi, kami berkendara menuju Tangerang Barat untuk mengunjungi pabrik yang mengolah sampah plastik menjadi bahan baku sehari-hari. Aku penasaran, gimana sih caranya usia plastik bisa terus diperpanjang?
Saat ini aku lagi ada di PT Langgeng Jaya Fiberindo. Akan ketemu dengan Mbak Kristen Halim, CEO perusahaan ini. Kita akan tur keliling pabrik, ngobrolin soal sampah plastik, ngelihat hasilnya kayak apa. Ikutin aja. Halo Mbak Kristen.
Selamat siang.
Makasih nih udah boleh main-main ke
Sama-sama.
pabriknya. Gede banget ya, luas banget.
Pertamanya dicuci dulu di sini sama di sini.
Pakai mesin yang ini ya?
Iya, mesin ini. Setelah itu masuk ke conveyor ini, naik ke sini.
Jadi pertama tuh dicuci masih dalam bentuk botol.
Masih dalam bentuk botol. Ini proses pencucian semuanya sampai ke sini.
Sampai ke sana.
Ya, ini hasil dicuci. Ini akan nanti kan ada air panas di situ. Jadi akan kelihatan yang PVC sama yang PET. Kita bisa sortirin. Ini ada proses sortir ulang di sini. Dari sortir akan dimasukkan ke mesin giling.
Di pabrik ini, mereka memproduksi berbagai macam produk dari botol plastik PET yang sudah melewati kurang lebih proses yang sama. Plastik-plastik ini dipilah, kemudian dibersihkan, lalu dicacah menjadi biji-biji plastik. Biji-biji plastik ini akan melewati proses lanjutan untuk kemudian dijadikan produk-produk seperti strapping band, geotextile yang digunakan untuk membuat jalan, dan dakron.
Jadi tadi dari flax yang kita lihat sudah digiling dan dikeringkan itu masih harus butuh proses pengeringan lagi. Ini sudah mau bikin menjadi fiber.
Oh, ini diproses untuk menjadi fiber.
Jadi fiber. Ini udah aplikasi dari flax di sana. Ini proses pembuatan benangnya.
Jadi fiber ya?
Jadi fiber. Akan jadi fiber yang halus seperti sarang laba-laba. Jadi dia panjang sekali. Ya. Ini benangnya panjang sekali.
Memang nggak boleh putus ya?
Dan ini nggak boleh putus dan bentuknya sangat tipis, ukurannya sangat tipis seperti jaring laba-laba. Setelah benangnya jadi akan ditarik supaya lebih kuat.
Ya.
Nah di sini dia akan diproses lebih ulang lagi supaya digambar seperti rambut dikeriting. Ya ini udah keriting. Nah setelah keriting dia akan dipotong.
Oh, dipotong lagi?
Sesuai ukuran. Karena kalau dalam bentuk panjang kan nggak bisa dimasukkan ke bantal.
Oh betul.
Atau dimasukkan ke boneka, nggak bisa.
Oh ini berarti untuk mengisi bantal dan boneka ya?
Setelah itu digunting. Nah di situ digunting jadi kecil-kecil.
Oh, ini ya?
Ya.
Jadi kayak gini?
Ya seperti ini. Ntar jadi kapasnya lucu.
Oh jadi lucu?
Iya. Jadi kayak gini nanti.
Ih gemes. Snow. Don't put that in. I was just messing around.
Ini isinya bantal.
Oh, jadi dari plastik
Isi boneka.
Yang tadi kita lihat di depan yang sudah dipres, terus setelah diolah, akhirnya hasil akhirnya bisa seperti ini ya?
Iya. Ini nanti buat isinya bantal, isi boneka.
Ini sama dakron bedanya?
Ya ini dakron itu.
Dakron itu berarti dari plastik?
Iya.
Oke.
Dakron itu dari botol.
Dari botol ya?
Iya.
Dan ini pengganti kapuk?
Pengganti kapuk. Dan ini non alergenik ya.
Kira-kira dengan skala bisnis seperti ini, pabrik seperti ini, masa depannya seperti apa sih? Apakah ini industri yang terus berkembang atau?
Saya yakin selagi manusia masih butuh plastik dalam kehidupannya dan sekarang ini kita hidup tidak bisa ya tanpa plastik. Industri recycle ini akan terus berkembang dan memang dibutuhkan lebih banyak lagi industri recycle untuk menjadi end of life-nya dari barang-barang yang kita konsumsi di masyarakat ini. Kalau kita punya sampah, kita harus bijak memperlakukannya. Jangan buang sembarangan, jangan buang di selokan. At least kita buang di tempat sampah yang benar lah.
Lebih bagus lagi kalau sudah dipilah ya?
Lebih bagus lagi kalau sudah dipilah. Lebih bagus lagi kalau pemerintah ngambilnya juga terpisah, nggak dicampur menjadi satu.
Jadi sebenarnya pemilahan itu bukan cuma dari rumah, tapi semua lapisan masyarakat, termasuk dinas sampah, pemerintah itu harus
bersinergi sama-sama menyelesaikan. Nggak bisa ini bukan PR-nya pemerintah aja atau PR-nya masyarakat aja, tapi PR-nya seluruh bangsa Indonesia.
Setelah kemarin ngobrol-ngobrol sama Pak Jumhana dan Pak Acep, dan hari ini ngobrol sama Mbak Christine, setelah ngelihat semua sampah yang ada di Bantar Gebang dan botol-botol plastik yang ada di sini, aku jadi ingat sih bahwa plastik merupakan masalah yang sangat besar bagi lingkungan kita. Tapi kalau kita cukup peduli dan kalau kita menanggapinya dengan baik, tak hanya kita bisa menyelamatkan lingkungan, tapi kita juga bisa menciptakan peluang bagi diri sendiri dan orang lain.
Parts of Indonesia are awash with plastic waste.
Ini food packaging. Jadi ini dari UK. Ini UK.
Hundreds of thousands of tons of plastic were imported last year, and it's ending up in remote villages.
Jadi masyarakat menjadi beralih gitu ya, dari petani padi menjadi petani plastik. Gitu.
Some is recycled, but huge mounds are dumped and burned.
Cucu saya waktu itu pernah sakit, masuk rumah sakit sampai 4 kali.
And we've discovered dangerous levels of highly toxic chemicals from burning plastic and making it into the food chain.
One of the most shocking results that we have ever had, especially in Indonesia, we never have this kind of results before.
This is Bangun, a small village in the east of Java, Indonesia's biggest island.
Dulu tahun 80-an memang ini adalah kawasan memang pertanian, jadi sebagian besar umumnya masyarakat di sini adalah petani.
But over the last few years, things here have started to change.
Since 2017 and 18, we've seen an increased flux of plastic entering Indonesia.
The UK, the US and Australia all send waste to Indonesia, supposedly to be recycled. Last year, Indonesia's plastic recycling industries imported around 300,000 tonnes of plastic waste. That's on top of the 900,000 tonnes they got from within the country. The UK sent 18,000 tonnes of plastic to Indonesia in the first half of this year, and 55,000 tonnes of paper. That makes it the fourth biggest recipient of British waste in the world.
Nah, ini contohnya. Jadi ini kan apa ya, Purina, ini food packaging. Jadi ini dari UK, ini UK.
Priggy Arisandi runs a local environmental organisation called Ecoton.
Bungkus-bungkus ini tuh seperti ini. Jadi multi layer gitu. Selain dia ada plastiknya seperti ini, ada plastiknya, ada juga kemudian ini, ada aluminium foil. Ini kemudian apa ya, istilahnya itu nilai kerumunnya rendah.
So why is plastic from the UK ending up in Bangun? Well, paper is key here. Indonesia has some of the world's biggest paper mills. The factories nearby import around 40% of the paper they recycle. But the bales of old paper are arriving with plastic in them.
Peningkatan ini kemudian menjadikan masyarakat semakin bersemangat. Jadi masyarakat menjadi beralih gitu ya, dari petani padi menjadi petani plastik. Gitu.
The paper factories have no use for the plastic, and the villagers buy it by the truckload. They sift through the waste, selling the better quality material onto plastic factories who reuse it.
Kan kalau sudah nggak bisa dijual kan di PP ini buat bakar pabrik tahu, pabrik kerupuk gitu.
Supiati has been living in Bangun for 11 years. She says she earns up to £6 a day from the plastic. And because of the money on offer, people here want more of it, not less.
Saya milah-milah plastik semenjak saya datang ke sini, saya milah-milah plastik. Hasilnya sudah saya buat beli tanah ini sama anak sekolah.
Amongst the plastic scraps here is metal wiring, originally used to hold the imported paper bales together. It can be sold on too, but only after the metal has been stripped of its plastic coating. And to remove the coating, they burn it.
There's an increased number of cases of respiratory diseases. There are lots of places that we've seen people burn the plastic piles.
But if burning plastic is an issue here in Bangun, it's far worse in a nearby village. Tropodo is an hour's drive from Bangun. It's full of small factories making tofu, a food made from soya beans that's widely eaten in Indonesia. The heat inside the factories is almost unbearable. Fires keep pots of water boiling hot as soya beans are boiled down to make the tofu. What you might not expect is what's being used as fuel for the fire: plastic.
Kalau plastik kan enak, langsung penguapannya itu langsung panas, cepat plastik itu.
The factory owners buy this plastic from the sorters in Bangun.
Dulu itu bahan bakar satu treknya itu 1.500.000. Itu saya kalkulasi jadi 3 hari, 4 hari. Kalau plastik gini hanya 100.000.
Yuyun Ismawati is a leading Indonesian environmentalist. She's part of an international network of organisations called IPEN, which works to reduce and eliminate the impact of harmful chemicals.
Look what I found. It said recycle earth aware, but it ended up here in a tofu factory to be burned.
While burning plastic can lead to respiratory illness, it also releases highly toxic chemicals called dioxins, which can make it into the food chain.
We take the samples of eggs from houses around this village and analyze it to the lab for dioxins and other harmful chemicals.
When dioxins enter the food chain, they're stored in animal fats. So testing the eggs is a good way of assessing dioxin levels.
If people consume it beyond certain level, that could harm people's health.
We can now reveal that testing earlier this year found the second highest levels of dioxins in eggs ever recorded in Asia, 70 times over the safe level set by the European Food Safety Authority.
The results of our research is one of the most shocking results that we have ever had. Especially in Indonesia, we never have this kind of results before.
You wouldn't get ill eating the odd egg, but long-term dioxin exposure can cause reproductive and developmental problems, damage the immune system, and also cause cancer. That's according to the World Health Organization. While the results of the first round of testing were shocking, the sample size was small. Yuyun and her team are still waiting on the results of the second round. On the other side of Indonesia's biggest island is Sindang Jaya, a village on the outskirts of Jakarta, and in the middle of a fight back against unwanted plastic waste. Plastic is still being burned here, but things were much worse just a few months ago.
Dari sini kita tahu bahwa kondisinya adalah ada pembuangan sampah-sampah yang notabene kadang juga ada dari luar negeri segala macam. Betul. Kita bisa lihat semua arealnya sih nggak sebegitu besar, cuman ya asapnya tentunya akan mengganggu.
And the fumes have had a shocking impact on the people living in the local neighborhood.
Cucu saya waktu itu pernah sakit, masuk rumah sakit sampai 4 kali. Katanya ini asap, waktu itu pernah asap, terus alergi dari asap itu. Kan pada masuk rumah sakit, banyak.
At one point, traders were burning plastic nearby throughout the night.
Mulainya kurang lebih jam 5 sore sampai pagi jam 4.
Ellie Prima's daughter Jan is 3. She's had a bad cough, seizures and trouble breathing.
Anak saya gitu, udah 2 kali berobat langsung ke Sari Asi, ya itu yang saya alami. Awal masuk ke UGD langsung ditanganin sama perawat, langsung diimpus. Sudah diimpus karena sesak ya kan, kasih oksigen.
The situation got tense, but after discussions between local leaders and plastic traders, the bigger scale open burning of plastic stopped. And there's evidence that a change in government policy is having an impact. They've started stopping containers of household waste from entering the country. Lorries line the road outside 2 local plastic factories, their contents seized by Indonesian customs.
Mereka punya penanganan sendiri lah, tentunya lebih canggih, lebih modern lah. Silahkan diolah sendiri, janganlah dibuang ke kita atau jangan diekspor ke kita.
But it remains to be seen whether the government can stop the tide of imported waste. And if they can't prevent people from burning plastic, things will only get worse.
ISPO merupakan komitmen dari pemerintah Indonesia untuk menerbitkan suatu sistem kelapa sawit berkelanjutan Indonesia, memperbaiki tata kelola perkebunan kelapa sawit, pengurangan emisi gas rumah kaca, perlindungan terhadap lingkungan sesuai dengan prinsip sustainability.
ISPO adalah sebuah komitmen dari petani kelapa sawit Indonesia kepada pembangunan berkelanjutan.
Kalau dulu kita memupuk, memanen suka-suka kita, asal-asalan kita. Nah, setelah kita ikut sertifikasi, mulai dari perawatan, pemanenan, pemupukan, semuanya itu diarahkan sesuai dengan CAP.
Sion Agri mulai bermitra dengan Amani sejak tahun 2012, selalu mendampingi Amanah di dalam proses sertifikasi. Sehingga di tahun 2013, Amanah berhasil memperoleh sertifikasi RSPO dan sertifikasi ISPO di tahun 2017.
Dengan sertifikasi, kita tahu hal-hal yang dunia kita nggak tahu tentang perawatan kebun, kita juga ditunjukkan untuk menuju sawit yang berkelanjutan.
Petani mendapatkan energi baru, mendapatkan ilmu baru bagaimana kita mengelola sawit secara berkelanjutan.
Dengan pengelolaan yang baik inilah kita berdamai dengan lingkungan kita untuk kebaikan kita juga ke depannya.
Concern pihak-pihak di Eropa itu sangat besar mengenai sustainability dari palm oil kita. Maka bagi kita, jawabannya adalah ISPO, Indonesian Sustainable Palm Oil.
Dalam menuju pembangunan kelapa sawit berkelanjutan khususnya di Indonesia, pemerintah memerlukan dukungan dan kolaborasi berbagai pihak, termasuk negara-negara EU dalam mendorong sektor kelapa sawit di Indonesia menuju lebih sustainable itu penting.
Kita ajak delegasi Uni Eropa dan perwakilan dari kedutaan besar dari negara Uni Eropa di Jakarta untuk melihat seperti apa sih petani kecil kita bisa memenuhi standar-standar di dalam ISPO. Kemudian kita ajak juga mereka melihat langsung seperti apa perusahaan milik negara yang sudah berhasil memenuhi ISPO dan juga sudah mempunyai sertifikasi RSPO yang lebih banyak diterima di Eropa.
European and Spanish societies concerned for sustainability and fight against climate change. So all the efforts being taken to assure that palm oil production in Indonesia is sustainable have our backing for sure. And also we've heard that this work is being carried out in order to improve the current system. So those are very good news.
Harapan kita adalah pihak Uni Eropa segera siap untuk membahas lebih dalam Sustainable Palm Oil Certification seperti apa yang lebih bisa diterima oleh mereka. Bagaimana menjadikan ISPO lebih baik sehingga dapat diterima di semua negara Uni Eropa yang membeli minyak sawit dari Indonesia.
Saya memancing, penting buat saya. Antara memancing dia yang bikin hidup untuk saya.
Bagi saya, karena ini suatu pekerjaan bagi saya dan hobi, memang sudah dari turun-temurun.
The water area in Indonesia cover up about 4 times the land area. We even have a song about our ancestors are being fishermen. So we rely heavily in the fishery for our livelihoods. One-by-one fishing is catching one fish with using one hook, one at a time. Ketika saya memancing, saya gunakan satu pancing untuk satu ikan.
Untuk mancing satu persatu ini banyak keuntungannya. Satu hal, dalam kualitas ikan itu dia baik dan dia itu ramah lingkungan.
Because we target the species that we want to catch. It has a really small bycatch.
Cara tangkap ini yang paling ramah lingkungan dan dapat memberikan dampak positif terhadap perekonomian masyarakat dan keberlanjutan dari alam bawah laut kita.
The fishermen catch the fish. Directly they put the fish into the ice to keep the fish in the fresh condition.
Within 1 or 2 days, they're going to come back to the port, either freeze it or directly go to the canning factory. When the fish arrive in the factory, first we're going to check for the freshness and the quality of the fish itself. Then you get cleaned, cooked, and then packed into the can.
Indonesia one-by-one tuna products are exported to market around the world.
The traceability is one of the most important part of our fisheries. When we catch it, we know where does the fish come from, which area of the oceans, and who caught it, when was it caught.
We take pride in delivering a product that exceeds our customer expectations.
About 7 million of our Indonesian people are working directly in the fisheries and in aquaculture.
Pekerjaan ini sangat membantu memberikan penghasilan yang stabil. Dengan bekerja di sini saya bisa membeli rumah dan bisa mencukupi kebutuhan keluarga.
Saya sangat senang bekerja di sini karena rasa kekeluargaannya tinggi.
Indonesia's pollen line and handline tuna fisheries have been on a journey since 2014 to achieve the Marine Stewardship Council certification.
The ultimate goal is to demonstrate the value that a well-managed fishery can bring to the coastal communities here in Indonesia. It's really the fishing community that depend upon this resource that are at the heart of our work. We want to make sure that they're recognised and rewarded for their environmental stewardship. So there's a lot of work happening on the ground to meet the standards. We're collecting a lot of data from the Observers Programme, from onboard cameras, from the vessel tracking systems, and we're also working hard with the Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries. Collaboration has been key throughout this project. Everyone coming together and working towards the same goal, to see these fisheries get the market recognition they deserve. Because the fisheries are low impact and so closely connected to the communities here in Indonesia, they contribute to a number of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So by supporting them, responsible businesses around the world can demonstrate their commitment to the Sustainable Development Goals.
For decades, we've been doing one-by-one fishing like this, and we want to ensure this will continue for our future generations.
If you buy the one-by-one fish, then you be a part of the sustainable fisheries in Indonesia.
You're actually supporting our fishery communities, especially our future generations.
Here on the outskirts of Bandung, a city on Indonesia's main island Java, something is being cultivated that could be of great value. Mushrooms. They rarely draw much attention. There are many species with many varied properties. Some are nourishing, others contain medicinal agents. Here, they're the raw material for an innovative kind of textile.
Mushroom is super ingredient to become a sustainable future leather because it grows mycelium, a vegetative part of the fungus that can mimicking perfectly like a leather without any PU or PVC or any chemical content-based material.
Adi Reza Nugroho comes from a family of mushroom farmers. In 2012, he and some colleagues founded a startup for gourmet mushrooms, but they quickly changed tack to focus on mycelium. They're committed to developing a sustainable and animal-friendly fashion industry.
Compared to animal leather, mycelium leather is having a really huge advantage in environmental impact. For example, we consume less water, we don't have to kill animal, we can do vertical farming, so we can save some space, and it also emits a really less carbon emission.
They feed their mushrooms with organic waste such as sawdust. Their company, Mycotech, sources it locally. What's waste for the wood mill is a recyclable treasure here. First, the sawdust is cleaned with steam. Then it's mixed with tiny mushroom spores. They consume the sawdust, and at the same time, on the outside of the sawdust blocks, they produce tightly woven mycelium, which can be harvested within a few days. The process uses a fraction of the water used in standard leather production, less than 1/10. This has caught the attention of Joko Harlanda. He makes and sells shoes. Many, of course, are made of leather, but these days he's keen to find alternatives.
The leather industry is one of the biggest contributors for carbon emission, and we see that as long as we keep selling footwear, leather footwear, and then as the sales grew, we keep damaging the environment, and then it came to a realization that we need to find a sustainable solution.
At first, he balked at the notion of mushroom leather, but his team have now learned how to work with it. Mycelium fabric is breathable, flexible, and robust. It can last for years. And it's an eco-friendly, sustainable product. Companies around the world are discovering its advantages. Mycelium shoes still have a long way to go. They're not yet widely available. They're not yet a mass-market product.
It has still higher cost because due to the scale, meaning that we still produce it in limited quantity. It's a learning curve, but as an innovation company, we need to learn. And I think the future will be very bright for us.
Adi Reza Nugroho and his team agree. They're busy ramping up production. They already have orders for as far ahead as 2027.
So currently we are producing 2,000 square feet of mycelium leather per year. However, the demand is really huge, so we need to double down our capacity in order to keep up with the demand.
The company is growing. It used to have just 5 employees, now it has 30. It monitors carefully the quality of its output, even testing samples to destruction. It also breeds its own mushrooms and works on optimizing them for the task at hand. It gets some outside funding for its pioneering research that helps sustain the startup. Adi Reza Nugroho will go the extra mile with his mushroom leather shoes. It's a great idea whose time has come.
It's a school that's really green, teaching us how to live sustainably, how we could preserve our world. First time I heard about the school, I feel so jealous. I was jealous, totally jealous, that I really wish that I still a little girl so that I can enter this kind of school.
The Green School in Bali takes green to a next level. Built in the middle of the jungle, it's nearly completely from bamboo. The school runs a recycling center that also operates in the surrounding community. It generates its own energy to meet big part of its needs and grows organic food for its vegetarian school lunches. The school raises a generation of children who live mindfully and actively care for the earth.
So then I try to find a way to send my kids here. And this is an international school in terms of tuition. That's why we feel so glad that the school have a local scholarship program. And now my older son, Gus Day, he already at grade 6 at middle school. He's learning about how to be a green leader. That's very important for me.
I, integrity. R, responsibility. E, empathy. S, sustainability. P, peace. E, equality or equity. C, community. And T, trust. And all those things play a role in Green School.
The decade-old school applies a holistic academic approach, from kindergarten through to high school. They focus on 3 key frames of learning: thematic, proficiency, and experiential.
Instead of just reading a book and seeing the pictures and learning the facts, we get to see it happen live out there, and we get to feel the animals. We get to experience it with all 5 senses.
Gusta's mom now works as the school's after-school activities coordinator. Darwiyati is grateful that she can give back to the school that gives so much to her family and community. The school also has a strong international appeal, with parents from around the world moving to Bali to give their children this progressive educational experience.
The reason we came to Bali was driven by the kids originally, because John Hardy came to their school to visit, and we came to Bali, saw the school, and they said, wow, if we could actually ever study here, that would be a great thing. We have these integrated, what are called Jalan-Jalan thematic learning approaches, where you're learning actually how, from a beginning to an end, how a project works. You know, you're integrating economics, you're integrating biology, you're integrating different aspects of science learning and working with your peers and collaborating at a level we haven't seen before.
There's still plenty work in progress at the school, but Darwiyati truly hopes that green schools will be replicated in other parts of the globe.
Every kid deserves to have this kind of education around the world, so that we can have more green leaders that we dream of.